Mike with Michael Schumacher, brought to you by JR's Oasis. It's more than a fuel station, more than a convenience store. It is your one-stop travel shop on Fox Sports Radio, 101.5 FM, 1570 AM, KVTK, Vermilion, and Yankton. And we are talking some South Central League baseball, some amateur baseball, as we love to take a look at players from the past. And I had a player suggested, and he said yes, so we're talking to Simon Healy. Simon, how are you doing today?
Very good. How are you doing?
Well, I am better than I deserve. I want to say thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me. Really appreciate it. And, let's just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself, about you, your family, background, hobbies, interests, and then we'll talk some baseball.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm farm with my family just outside Irene, kind of in between Irene and Yankton. I got 4 children. I got a boy who's a senior, a girl who's going to be sophomore, and then I have a 6th grader and a 4th grader, 2 more boys. So I got plenty of help on the farm, and we get a lot of done when we need to. So.
All right, and so you farm. Is your son Kane?
Yes, it is Kane.
Oh, so I've actually spoken with him before. So okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
he does pretty well. He did very good in track this year. He got 3rd in both shot and discus up at the state track meet. So he's doing pretty well for himself in the sports realm, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And so we have to assume you get some of his athleticism at least from you.
Oh, maybe, I guess he surpassed me at when I was his age. He's a lot taller than me, but I still think I could whip him, so I guess I haven't quite tried that yet. But I still think the dad could overpower him.
I think so. We'll go with that, and I think I've finally reached an age where my dad's now 80. I think I can beat him now, but
right.
It was a while.
Yeah.
I think it was a while before we got to that part. So
oh yeah.
All
definitely.
right. Well, excellent. Well, just kind of talk about your background in sports, because yours was the name that Dustin came up with for Irene, but just kind of talk about your background in sports overall.
I guess I've played every sport I could since I could play sports. Healy's, my great grandparents and uncles and all that, they've always, and my grandpa, that baseball is a big thing in the Healy family. So I've grown up watching it, all ages of it, and it's just something that I'm very, very passionate about, and I love to play it. And I played it in college for a little bit, and I played amateurs, I think, for 17 or 18 years, and then we just got to where the kids were old enough and needed to kind of shift from me playing the sport to help coaching the sport, and I got a few injuries along the way, and the last one I broke my bicep tendon. It was at districts in Tabor, actually, and that was the last game I played. So that was, thank God, kind of gave me the hint that I kind of have to give up my time and start, passing on my knowledge to my kids. So.
Well, and but playing 17 years, kind of talk about what kept you coming out, and what it means to Irene. But yeah, talk about what got you started and what kept you in it for so many years.
Well, it was just a fun sport. Something that I worked on a lot in the off season, and it was just a fun thing to play. And all my teammates over the years, they're all my best friends, and it was just a fun time. You got to play ball game with your friends twice a week, and you kind of have some extracurriculars after the events are over, and you got to drink a little beer in the stands, and it was just a good time to spend with your friends you might not see except for the summertime. After I got out of college and stuff, you weren't around them much, so in the summer times they'd all come back, and everyone at one time. I was the only person that actually lived in Irene. All of them came from Sioux Falls. That's they're still from Irene, but they all drove from Sioux Falls because that's where they all lived. So it was just back then everybody just wanted to play. So it was just a fun time, and both at home and then when we go to the away games, I have many good friends that I've met over the years playing baseball at every town, and I still talk to them when I go to sporting events or something like that. We always find them in the stands or walking around. We always stop and chat. So it's a kind of a lifelong thing when you meet people playing baseball or any sport. It's just something that make good friends and acquaintance out of them over the years.
Well, and I totally can appreciate that. And amateur baseball, I tend to get a bit romantic about it. I never played. I'm as unathletic as they come, but I enjoyed it. I loved. I grew up on a farm south of Crofton, so Crofton, obviously big baseball community, and I grew up reading the Press and Dakotan and seeing the box scores and reading the stats, and so I had my heroes, whether it was a Crofton Blue Jay or names that I idolized growing up, like a Mike Dufek and a Bill Van Driel and stuff like that.
Correct.
So some of those greats, and I feel like nothing feels as right as maybe an amateur baseball game. People just out there doing what they love. They're not doing it for a paycheck. They're doing it for the sport, and then the crowd that's there and just the community that's built. Kind of talk about what that. How that was ingrained in you, and what did that feel like? Did you get that feeling when you were playing, and were you able to kind of appreciate that?
Oh yeah, no, I grew up the same. Watching my dad play for many years, and seeing the guys that he played against, and it was just a fun thing to experience. And then like all the fans, you go to, or you go to a different town, and then a fan comes up to you and asks if you're Simon Healy, and they like watching you play, and there was always different types of fans when you go to one place or the other. Some fans were there just to have fun, and some fans are there that they were serious about baseball, and they would argue and banter and stuff like that. So it was always a different atmosphere no matter where you played, and it was always and you just knew when you were coming there what to expect. And some nights were worse than others, but it was always a fun community and a fun atmosphere to play in, no matter where you were. But especially at Irene, that was, to me, Irene always had the best fans, and they're always, a lot of them were family members, that would always come. But then there's a lot of the townspeople come too, and it was just a good thing to be a part of. Them watching you and you getting to visit with them, and still to this day, there are always people that come up and talk to you after, that you saw or played for, years ago, and they would still come up and talk, just not about baseball, but just a friendly conversation. So it's just a lifelong thing when you play baseball, amateur baseball.
Well, and what I love about it is rare is the time that teams just pack up and leave. Like, because you mentioned that earlier, there's always that camaraderie afterwards, whether it's in the dugouts sharing a beverage or just chatting by home plate. And what I also love is the generations. You see some Legion players or 17, 18, 19-year-olds, and you see 35, 36, 37-year-olds out there or older. I remember Randy Phillips in Crofton playing until I think he was 50.
Mm-hmm.
You see these players, and it's this thread, and as a fan of the movie Field of Dreams, baseball's been constant, and that's what I love. It's this generational thread and the community thread, and it feels like it kind of weaves itself throughout. And the concessions and the volunteerism. But for a couple of years there, Irene didn't have it. And as somebody that's in the community, what was that like? And then what did it mean for Irene when it came back? Because I feel like it's amazing when I go to Lars Anderson Field, that atmosphere, it almost feels like they appreciate it more now that they didn't have it. Then maybe some communities do that have just have it and that expect it every year.
Yeah, well, I agree because the year I retired or quit, whatever you want to call it, that was then Irene didn't have enough players. So there was a lot of us that were kind of at that age, and then we lost quite a few, and then they had to go play for Menno for I believe 2 years, and then they got enough guys, and then they come back, and now they got plenty guys to play, and that is just that's great, because when you lose a town baseball team like that, then you just lose the summer fun. A lot of the town's folks, they don't have much, to do besides that in the summertime, and it was great to see them come back, and hopefully they never ever have that issue of having to worry about kids playing, because while they're Irene didn't have a Legion team, and then a lot of the teeners, you don't have 1 year of teeners, and then the second year of teeners they wouldn't have because the kids just, more and more high school stuff is just pushed throughout the summertime, and I see that where the coach want to keep them going with that sports. I mean, my kids all do it in the summertime, but years ago the only summer sport was baseball, so that's why I think it was always just that was your sport. That's what you did besides school. In summertime you worked on the farm and you got to go play baseball. So I see the kids getting more busy, and that's just how it is. But once a team loses, or the amateur team gets doesn't have a team in Irene, it definitely is. You strive for that atmosphere in the summertime. So once they have it back now, I think it's going to be kept there for a long, long time. So.
Well, I think it will be as well. And just kind of talk about each community has their pride in their facilities, in their stadium, in their field.
Yep.
You go to Crofton and Jim Wortman, maintaining that field. You go to Lars Anderson Field. I love you come up around this corner, and then it's just nestled down in there. The lily pad in Menno. Freeman does a great job.
Yep.
Just kind of talk about those experiences, because that is what's unique, and that community pride that goes with it. Just talk about the experiences of each different facility. How unique that can be.
Yeah, I guess it was always Crofton always had the one that was just kept up, nice and prim. The infield was always true bounce. And you just tell that they put a lot of hard work. Oh, everybody put hard work into their stuff. And every field was different. You had the light poles in bounds, inside, and Irene and Tabor, and it's just every place had their own little thing that you knew what to expect or how to play different there, and how the ball would come off the backstop a little harder some places versus other. Irene's, it would hit and kind of curl up and fall down, and then Crofton, they had the hard backstop. Freeman had a hard backstop, and it would kind of bounce all the way back, and you learn that the hard way one time because you think it's going to get away from the catcher. Well, shoot, it just bounces right back to him, and he's there waiting for you with the ball. So Yankton was always, that was turf, towards the end there, and that was different to play on. It was hard. It was great to be on and be a part of, but sliding was always, I had a problem with that, because you'd slide right over the base, and then hitting was a little different. So, I mean, once you get used to it, I'm sure it was awesome, but, to me, the turf was I wasn't on it enough, so it was just a little bit different, your stride, your cleats caught and stuff like that, or when you pitched, it was just a different way you had to go about the game, and, why not for good portion of my career, they had a dirt infield. So, when you went down to Wynot, you were just going to be a dust ball when you come home because it was just dirt, the whole infield. And that was always a, struggle sometimes, or the ball would bounce or, come right to you, and you just never knew. But then they put the grass infield in, and then it was just kind of the same as everybody else's. But yeah, it was always hot down in Wynot. It seemed like when we always played them later in the season, so it always seemed it was always hot down there, and Menno always had the stockyards behind there, so you'd always see her, pig squealing or something like that, or and foul balls would always go behind there, and the kids would always run in the pens, and so yeah, it was always every place had their own, feel to it, versus the even the fans, but just the diamonds all themselves all had their own different feel, and you could just, in some places you felt you did better at, and not. But I guess for me, it was just kind of always who pitched when, or however team was. But it was always fun to go to each place and get to know the new kids that are playing, and and then catch up with all the old ones you've been playing with for many, many years. And
well, and I can definitely see that. Now, obviously, you kind of grew up as a fan, like you said, watching your dad play, and then as a player, who were some of the players that you grew up, kind of looking up to, and then who were some of the best players you either got to play with or against?
Oh boy, well, Mike Dufek, he'd be my dad's cousin. So I mean, I grew up watching Mike, and always talking to him and Dorothy and Dennis after games, and that's a big one that sticks out in my mind. And Joe Cease, he'd probably be the best one I ever played with. He's a great athlete. Just he's just one of the true Cardinals of Irene, and just a fun guy to play with, and a more fun guy to have a beverage afterwards with too. So, a lot of the Yankton players. I mean, there a lot of college kids come out of Yankton. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent down there. And the Captain boys, Rob and Joe. Joe, you just dreaded when you had to face Joe, because you just knew what he was going to bring, and then he could back it up with the bat too, because he was just a terror on both sides of the ball. And Rob, before he hurt his arms a lot, and he threw extremely hard for Scotland years ago. Rob Keppen and all the Gunthers, Bill Gunther down in Crofton, Chad and Tony, and all the Gunthers down there were good. Lee, why not Lee Hymas? He had a lot of. I didn't get to face Jay down there, the good pitcher that they had, but Dad did, and I remember watching him play, and that was quite something to see. And he went off. I don't know if he pitched for semi-pro or if he did go pro or not, but he was definitely one of them that was top tier, baseball players back then. So, there's tons. Every town had ones that just shined above others, and that's just a few that just stick out in my head that are just, you hated to play against them, but they were always a good player that you loved to play with them, but you hated playing against them because you just knew how good they were. So.
Well, that is so cool. Well, and that's what I love. I just always grew up loving amateur baseball, and so I thought, that's why I tried doing these interviews, because it's so fun to talk to players that maybe have stepped away. And do you get a chance to still go to the games in Irene, or is that not something that's on your agenda as much?
Well, I do when I can make them. I do. It's not near as many as I want to, but with all the farming and the cattle and all my kids' stuff, I just don't have very many open nights. And if we do have an open night, it's usually kind of just trying to gather yourself for the next day. But it's definitely something that I would like to make a part more. But with the kids' schedules, it just kind of gets hard. But
well, completely understandable. Well, Simon, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. Really appreciate it. Thank you for kind of taking us down memory lane, and look forward to hopefully maybe seeing you at a game or something. And I look forward. I'm sure I will have opportunity to talk to Kane at some point this coming season.
Good.
Hey, thank you so much. You have yourself a great rest of your day. Okay.
You too. Thanks for calling.
Hey, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
You bet. Bye.
That was Simon Healy, and a lot of fun names there. I feel like I could do South Central League baseball and amateur baseball. I just feel like I could do it full time. I mean, talking about it, because I hope you guys love it as I do. Those names all popped up for me as he was talking there. And now I'm not quite sure. You know how it is. You misremember. I can't remember if it was Joe C's, but we had a student teacher in Crofton my sophomore, junior year. And he was a C's, and he was from Irene. I don't know what the first name was. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh yeah, that was so-and-so. It could have been Joe, Mike, I don't know. But text me, 605-661-5858. And if there's any content here that you'd like to be a sponsor, that you'd like to attach your business name to, I would give you so much credit. So you can just give me a call, text me, whatever. Again, 605-661-5858. We'll make it worth your while. All right, we'll be back with more. This is At the Mic with Michael Schumacher, brought to you by JR's Oasis, also broadcasting South Central League Baseball. Love doing that. We'll be back with more after this.